What's up, guys? What's up, Packer fans? Poor and other followers on the internet, the YouTube. Friday night. Not really sure how this is going to go. We'll see how many people turn up on Friday night. Try to get the comment out there. Try to get the word out there. You know, YouTube has this fantastic ability where you can actually pin comments or post comments, kind of like a Facebook or a Twitter, directly on your YouTube, and all of your guys can get my notifications. But you have to have 10,000 subscribers, and I'm just trying to reach 1,000 with a couple weeks to go. But man, will that be a nice thing when that day comes, when I can just kind of give you guys updates. Long story short, I had the flu. Boy, oh boy, it wiped me out. At about 1 o'clock on Sunday, I started to feel some of the chills, and it wasn't like anxiousness or nerves for the game. You get those little prickly needles and you just don't start feeling right, like the clothes start brushing on your skin all weird. And then by about 4 o'clock, I didn't even feel like I could stand, let alone walk. Had a Packer party, had friends coming over. I gave those guys all heads up. I'm coming down with something. I think I might be getting sick. But if you guys want to join the Packer party, just beware that I could be contagious. I took some medicine. I took some Jello shots in the first half. I felt good, and then come the second half, whew! No, I was on the couch. I was like motionless, like a baby. Like men in general, I think, just have a terrible pain tolerance. I am just an absolute wuss when it comes to the flu. So I got sick and did not get to truly enjoy the Packers' divisional round victory over the Seattle Seahawks as much as I would have liked to. So I'm really, more than anything, I'm looking so forward to Sunday's game, just from the aspect that it's playoff football. I will be healthy. I can fully enjoy the game, be invested in the game. So there is a little backstory. Obviously, I did not go live on Monday night. Did not go live Tuesday, did not go Wednesday, and then as luck would have it, my wife ends up with the flu and is now feeling a little bit under the weather herself. So I'm shooting this out there on Friday night. 13 of you have tuned in so far. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm not really sure. Here in good old western Wisconsin, where I reside, we are in a winter storm warning. So there's not a whole lot of people out and about tonight. Gives me a reason to stay indoors 100%. But I am excited to see how many of you guys show up. I'm seeing some of the names right now. Podcast is in here. My boy Big B's in here. Number one Pack. Melanie, I love all you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in and checking out the video. We're going to do a little bit of a hybrid. So because I typically do two videos, one on Monday and then my final thoughts video that posts at some point on Friday, I figured I would do a hybrid video for you guys tonight. So feel free. We'll kind of do some Q&A throughout the video, but I kind of figured that I would just go into some of my thoughts and recaps and go on a little bit of a tangent and talk a little bit. And you guys can kind of shoot out some comments along the way and we'll address questions. And I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are on the game, because obviously the Packers are huge underdogs in Sunday's matchup. If you look at like the ESPN expert picks, there's one lone guy out there that decided to pick Green Bay. Everyone else is saying Kansas City and the San Francisco 49ers, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, this is backs against the wall. Nobody's believed in this team outside of Packers Nation the entire season. New head coach. Would he get along with Aaron Rodgers? What would they do? Would this defense be able to carry the offense that if they were to struggle? They go 13-3. They win the division. We know the story. We've been underdogs all season, and this is kind of that penultimate moment for Green Bay where they can head into San Francisco, where they got blown out. That was their last loss of the year. They can head into that stadium, kind of make some waves, and I am completely hyped. Win or loss, draw, whatever the case is, I'm just so excited that the Packers are in the NFC Championship game. It feels like it's been forever. It has been forever, since 2014, since we've been a competitive team digging deep into that NFC Championship game. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Love that you guys are tuning in. A couple thoughts on that Packers victory over Seattle. So that was a game. If you watched my final thoughts video on that Seattle Seahawks game, I had no worries. I expected a bigger blowout. 31-13 was my score prediction, and it was looking like it was heading that direction. It was 21-3 at halftime. Green Bay was extremely dominant on both sides of the football, really in all three phases of that game. Defense was able to kind of take control of Russell Wilson, put a lot of pressure on him. The offense was moving the ball consistently, and then Russell Wilson, just an outstanding quarterback, was able to do some things in the second half and got Seattle going and back into that game. Made it a little bit closer than we wanted to. But of course, Jair comes up huge on the 2-point conversion to keep it a 5-point game. Then you also look at Preston Smith on that third down sack to essentially end Seattle's drive with about 4 minutes left, causing them to punt. I'm sure you guys have watched the highlights. I'm sure this is recap, but it was an excellent game. It should have been. It should have been obvious that it would have been a closely contested game. I think even though that I believe it, that Green Bay matched up so much better than Seattle, and I thought it would be a much bigger blowout than it actually was. Seattle did an outstanding job of staying into it. Davante Adams came out of his shell, and then you look at a guy like Jimmy Graham, who has struggled all season, had some huge, big-time third down catches, but it might be getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about the last meeting as far as the Green Bay Packers, San Francisco. They met back in Week 12. We know the results. Because of that, a lot of the reasons because of that game, you look at a 7.5-point favorite that the San Francisco 49ers are, but this game wasn't. The score is deceiving, and I watched the highlights of this game, and I looked at some of the statistics. The biggest takeaways for me from this game is that Brian Bulaga was inactive for this game, right? So he had to sit out with a knee injury. That brought Alex Light to the forefront, made him that guy on the right guard that was responsible for protecting Rodgers. And when you're looking at that just fearsome front seven, or even just their front four, for that San Francisco 49ers game, Alex Light was not able to be put into that role. And because he struggled so much, then we go out there and we sign Jared Valdir 3 days after that loss as a safety blanket, a precautionary safety blanket. And boy, did that pay off when he had just a game of all games last week against Seattle. So I look at that as being a huge reason. Rodgers was constantly struggling, scrambling the entire game. But their opening drive, Jones starts with a 5-yard run. They convert a nice 10-yard pass to Adams, pick up the first down, and then Adams chest bumps to the San Francisco guy, gets called a 10-yard penalty, and then we all know that Rodgers then gets sacked, and essentially San Francisco ends up with the ball at the 2-yard line, giving them essentially a 7-point advantage very early on in that game. Their next 7 possessions of that first half were not pretty, and they kind of mimicked essentially what came of that first drive. They went 3 and out on 5 of their next 7 possessions in the first half, so they just couldn't keep Rodgers upright. They couldn't keep the pressure off of him. Their best opportunity came when they were down 10-0. They had an 8-play, 52-yard drive, but it stalled in the San Francisco 28 when Aaron Jones was able to pick up a 4th down conversion. So they go down 23-0 at halftime, and that's a big deficit. I don't know off the top of my head, but we only had maybe 1 or 2 games this year, obviously 1. So maybe another game this year where the Packers were held scoreless in that first half. But the second half kind of started off a little bit better. We forced San Francisco 3 and out. Green Bay put together a 13-play, 65-yard touchdown drive and 2-point conversion to Davante Adams. Only down 23-8. Essentially, it's a 2-possession game at that point with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. But then right the next possession, San Francisco responds. They have a 2-play, 75-yard drive, capped off with a 61-yard touchdown by Kittle. And at that point, that was kind of your dagger, in a lack of better terms, when you're looking at that San Francisco team and what they were able to do. So I think that it got away from them early. The defense essentially got worn out just by Green Bay failing to put so much or lack of offense together throughout the entire game. All those 3 and outs absolutely killed them. The defense got exhausted, and it just kind of wore away at that defense and caused problems later on that game where the score just started to rack up and just yuck, right? So stats across the board, ugly. Rodgers had 104 yards off of 20 passes. He had his touchdown and his fumble. Adams had 43 yards receiving. Jones had 38 yards rushing. Williams had 45 yards rushing. But then you look at Za'Darius. He had one of those Za'Darius Smith games like he's had all season. He had a 1.5 sack game, and then Martinez had 1 sack himself. So stats are ugly across the board. But a couple things. First off, I love this matchup so much between the 49ers and the Packers. There's so much history in this game, and there's so much storylines that go along with this game as well. So you have obviously the matchups throughout the 90s. It almost seemed like year after year it was Packers 49ers either in the divisional round or the NFC Championship games with a lot on the line for trips to the Super Bowl, and both of those teams were successful in those stretches and made runs. And then you look a couple of years ago, back when Kaepernick was the quarterback, the history there was absolutely glorious with what he was able to do for San Francisco and the Super Bowl trips that they were able to make. And it's gone a little bit back and forth throughout the history with these guys, and they played a really awesome video in that Week 12 matchup, just talking about the history. But then you look at recent storylines. Obviously, you have the coaching between LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan. There's a lot of they coached together for many years. You look at Robert Saleh and the defensive coordinator for San Francisco. He was actually in I think it was either he was in Matt LaFleur's wedding or Matt LaFleur was in Robert Saleh's wedding. So there's a lot of connection between those two guys. And then, of course, Matt's brother coaches for the San Francisco 49ers as well. So there's storylines galore, whether you want to look at history or we're making history of what this could potentially turn into over the next couple years. But like I said, from that last game, Rodgers couldn't catch his breath. He couldn't stay upright. It was a huge loss not having Bulaga. Having Bulaga back and healthy, and then having a guy like Jared Valdir as a safety blanket this upcoming Sunday will be a bigger advantage than what we had in that Week 12 matchup. You look at Aaron Jones, he wasn't the primary bell cow for the running game. It was actually Williams who was getting the bulk of the carries and even the bulk of the receptions at running back in that game. And I anticipate that to change as we look at this matchup as well. I would think that we have to find a way to integrate Jones, because when Jones gets the ball and Jones gets carries and Jones rushes for 70, 80, 90, dare I say 100 yards, good things happen with that Green Bay offense. I anticipate, especially because they did not use Jones in screens, they didn't use him out in the flat, they didn't use him coming out of the backfield, they didn't use him in the slot, they didn't use him whatsoever in the passing game. I anticipate that they will probably tweak with that a little bit and use some of that of his abilities to catch the ball out of the backfield, and in a sense like we've seen Green Bay do with such success throughout the season on Sunday, to try and catch San Francisco off guard and keep some of that pressure off of Rodgers as well. Defense didn't play terrible against San Francisco, but that was a game, like I said, where they were just wore out. But the defense has played substantially better since that San Francisco matchup. They've held their remaining 5 opponents that they played to end the season under 20 points. They gave up 23 last week to Seattle, but that was only because Russell Wilson is an absolute beast and decided to get hot in the second half. But Kevin King is probably the most improved player that I look at since that Week 12 matchup. He's come up with 2 interceptions since that Week 12 game, and he's also just been a lockdown cornerback. I've really loved what I've seen out of him. I've been a huge Kevin King hater for the better half of the year, but the guy, I feel like, I don't know if a light switch turned on or if he turned a corner, he's been playing substantially better, and when he plays better, that entire defense and that secondary plays a lot better. Kenny Clark is my close number 2 for most improved player since that last matchup. He's amassed 4.5 sacks since Week 12, and since Week 10, he's averaged 0.88 sacks a game and 3.9 hurries a game. Now, in comparison, Aaron Donald, probably one of the best, if not the best at his position, also has amassed 0.88 sacks a game, but only 3.3 hurries a game. So he's playing on a level of Aaron Donald. And I know that's a huge leap. I know he's not at that level yet, but his recent performance does say otherwise. The stats do not lie, and I expect Kenny Clark to kind of be a part of the Bash Brothers with Preston and Zadarius Smith, and that to continue. And then speaking of Zadarius, he's always been dominant, but I've seen with him, the guy has a motor and it turns on, and when they play these guys, when they played the Vikings and when they played Seattle, it's another level. He turns it on to a different level, and when he goes 100%, it makes a difference. It creates chaos in that backfield, and he alone, I believe this, Zadarius alone can carry this defense to a victory on Sunday, and I believe he can carry this defense to a Super Bowl victory if we are that fortunate to get that far. I love what he brings to the team. There's no doubt he's my team MVP. That's not to discredit anything that Jones has done on the offensive side of the ball, because he's carried our offense for the majority of the season, but Zadarius is an absolute difference maker for what we're able to do on the defensive side of the ball. So San Francisco has every right to be confident, right? I mean, everybody, like I said before, they're just giving them the victory. They might as well just go ahead and hang the banner to start the second half, however you want to look at it. Have it all ready for them. They blew out the Packers 37-8. They completely shut down the Vikings offense, and more specifically, they shut down Dalvin Cook last week, and their rush game was able to roll all over the Minnesota defense, which I know that was their game plan, to shut down Kittle and to shut down San Francisco's run game. They did do a good job of stopping Kittle, but that run game had their way all day. They're playing at home. They have an extremely talented front seven. They have an extremely talented team. They have an extremely talented young coaching staff. I don't hate the San Francisco 49ers. They are not a hated team in my vocabulary yet. I have a lot of respect for those guys. I think that their organization mirrors a lot of what Green Bay does to an extent. But this is also a very different Packers team. Rodgers predicted this matchup as soon as that Week 12 game ended. He knew that, even heading into that game, he knew that they would have to win in San Francisco at some point this year. Had they won in San Francisco in Week 12, this game would be played in Lambeau. Maybe the entire narrative would have shifted from that point. But he knew he'd have to play San Francisco. They won. Green Bay's won 6 consecutive games, and like he said when he got drafted, this is kind of a little bit of a revenge game. I'm looking at that storyline. I'm curious how much that will play into the back of Rodgers' mindset. Maybe you guys can comment that off on the right side if you truly think that will motivate Rodgers one way or the other. But he said he will make San Francisco regret not drafting him, and we will see how much is going to go into that. But Rodgers looked like vintage Rodgers last week. He's 1-2 in NFC Championship games. I expect him to improve that record. He has to improve that record. I just mentally can't see him being 1-3 in NFC Championship games. I just don't see that happening. And I think he's hungrier than he's been in a long time to get his second ring, and that's just around the corner. Adams, like I said, has looked like himself, but he's looked even better. They talked this week, if you listen through Sports Talk Radio, or if you listen to Packers.com, wherever you get your Packers news, outside of Pour Another, of course, Rodgers compared Adams to Jordy Nelson, and he compared him to Jordy Nelson in his ability to now recall previous scenarios and previous plays, previous moments where they've lined up in against a defense and there's 3 minutes on the clock or whatever, and he can just remember the right thing to do, and he has that. He's getting to that point where he has that, telekinesis way with Aaron Rodgers, where he can just know they're on the same page, they will do the same thing, and that could be a very deadly thing for a 27-year-old Davante Adams, who is in the prime of his career and still has many years left under his belt. And then you look at Jimmy Graham, you have to give it up. This is probably like the one moment where I'll take a quick drink break. If you have one, cheers. But Jimmy Graham finally came out of his shell. He had huge catch after huge catch Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. They came on third down, obviously the biggest one coming late in the game to seal the game. And yes, that was a first down. I'm not even going to get into that with you guys. So kudos to him. His mind completely seems focused. He's ready. He's never been in this position of an NFC Championship game before, with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. So he is ready. He's focused. I expect him to have turned a corner as well and be somewhat of a threat in our passing game against the 49ers. So here's to you, Jimmy. I'm going to take a quick drink break. We're going to talk about the keys to victory, score predictions, and then we're going to open this all up to you guys. We're going to talk about it. I'm 18 minutes in, and my throat's a little bit parched. See, that's where I would cut it in my final thoughts video and then re-edit it. So again, Packers, they've taken full reins of this underdog thing. They've flipped the narrative to put the pressure on San Francisco, and I agree with that. Green Bay has no pressure heading into this game. When everybody's against you and nobody expects you to win, that almost it does. It makes you deadly. It makes you... you don't have to worry about messing up. People would expect you to mess up. People would expect Rodgers to overthrow passes. You can go in there without any of the worry of letting Packers Nation down, because you know that Packers Nation is going to be behind you regardless. But it's just a really amazing formula. I love the underdog theme. Put the pressure on San Francisco. They won 37-8. I've said they're at home. These guys should have that mindset that they're going to win, but don't even take that for granted. I think Green Bay is going to upset them. I'll get to that here in a little bit. These guys are all loose in the locker room. They all have confidence. And last point, when we talk about the underdog games and talking about the NFL playoffs, need I remind you, there was a team called, well, they're still called, I guess, the New Orleans Saints, the New England Patriots, the Baltimore Ravens. If you would have asked me, and I've made this very public on this channel, Baltimore looked like they should have just been given the Lombardi Trophy at the end of Week 17. They 14-2. Lamar Jackson, he's going to be the MVP when it's announced. They were the most dominant team on the face of the earth. It didn't seem like anybody could stop them. Kudos to Tennessee. They went in there. They had a game plan. They completely shut them down. If that doesn't tell you that even David can defeat Goliath, there's no more recent evidence than that game right there, and that turns the tides as far as we look at this. So we should definitely believe that Green Bay has a shot. I believe Green Bay has a shot, and here's my 2 keys to victory, and of course an X factor. So key to victory number 1 has to be win the turnover battle. Now, I've used this one a number of times throughout the year, but this is a place that Green Bay has absolutely excelled throughout the season. They have a plus 12 turnover differential, and when you look at San Francisco, they only have a plus 4 turnover differential. So this is an area in the game that Green Bay gets the nod. They have the advantage over the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they lost that turnover differential. I'm having a hard time saying that for some damn reason. They lost a turnover battle 0-1 in their Week 12 meeting, and we all know what that was. Rodgers fumbled the ball early, essentially gave San Francisco 7 points, and it really set the tone for that entire game. It got San Francisco just rocking. The whole stadium was rocking, and it was really hard. Even though it was early and there was a lot of game to be played, things can get away from you that fast, and something like that did get away from Green Bay, and it compounded very quickly. But you look at Minnesota and what they were able to do last week. Yes, they both had 2 turnovers apiece when you look at Vikings and San Francisco last week, but Minnesota was able to take away the ball twice, and they had 1 off of a pick from Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jimmy G will be playing in the biggest game of his career. The lights will be bright, and I'm not really sure if he's been proven, and I'm not really sure. I think if I'm a San Francisco 49er fan, I'm a little bit concerned about Jimmy Garoppolo and what he might do on Sunday if the pressure is there and he needs to make the big throw, and what will come of that scenario. Including the playoffs, Jimmy had 14 interceptions on the season, and only after a couple possessions that he threw that interception in that game against the Vikings, San Francisco elected to just run it 8 consecutive times for 44 yards. They chewed up 5 minutes of the clock, and they made themselves another touchdown, put another touchdown on the board. So Kyle Shanahan's not going to mess around with it too much. If the Packers can find themselves with a lead and Jimmy G is forced to throw the ball, expect Green Bay to kind of be a little bit of a ball hawk, and Za'Darius will do his job. I expect turnovers to come from the Garoppolo side of things. I'm not necessarily sure. Green Bay really in general hasn't been great at stripping the ball away or forcing fumbles throughout the season. Unless you want to talk about the Jair Alexander fumble that we had last week that was called a fumble, but we didn't really know who recovered it and all that bullshit that came with it. So yeah, Green Bay needs to win the turnover battle. It's going to be absolutely crucial on the road. It's going to give them more opportunities. It's going to give the boost to the defense, and it's going to start to make, hopefully, not only the San Francisco 49ers, but their fans a little bit worried on what goes on in that game. Key to victory number 2 is capitalize on red zone trips. So this is actually one that I pulled from Packers Unscripted, Mike and Wes on their podcast. I'm not going to just blatantly plagiarize their ideas or anything like that, so I did take this from them, but it was an excellent point, and it was a statistic that I wasn't really even aware of, so I wanted to share it with you guys. So Green Bay shockingly has the 2nd highest red zone efficiency on offense throughout the 2019 season. So when they've been able to get into the end zone, they come away with a score, whether a touchdown, mind you. I believe it was, I should have wrote the damn thing down, but I believe it was like 70% of the time, 75% of the time. Don't exactly quote me on that. But San Francisco, on the other side, only ranks 21 at their offensive red zone efficiency. So they're able to move the ball down there, but they're not necessarily able to always come away with touchdowns. Let's look at the Green Bay's defensive ability to stop teams in the red zone. They rank 11th. They are the 11th best team at stopping opponents in the red zone. And they've stopped opponents 88.33% of the time in their last 3 games. So they have been an absolutely a steel curtain. Sorry, Pittsburgh fans, if you're watching this, but they've created a steel curtain and have not allowed touchdowns when teams get into the red zone 88% of the time against the Vikings, against the Lions, and then against the Seattle Seahawks the last 3 games. San Francisco, on the other hand, they rank 20th at stopping opponents from scoring once they get into the red zone for the 2019 season. So you mirror that. If Green Bay is able to move the ball and able to get into scoring position, they need to capitalize on touchdowns. I've watched enough playoff football. I've watched enough games in my life to know that you can't settle for field goals, and I'm going to be really curious how Matt LaFleur handles this mindset and what I guess the scenarios are throughout the game, how close he wants to play it, or if he wants to be more aggressive and try to get some touchdowns rather than settling for the 3 points. You have to go down, you have to score. You can't, you look at Seattle and their opportunities that they could have had. It could have been a victory for Seattle, or they really could have made that offense have to put a drive together to put more points on the board if they are able to capitalize on those factors. So score in the red zone, absolutely crucial. Win that red zone battle. And then my X factor for the game, I picked a unit as a whole for my X factor, and that has to be the offensive line. For me, the most important X factor is going to be that entire offensive line and whether or not, A, they're able to give Aaron Rodgers time and keep him upright, because I was absolutely sick of watching it at halftime against San Francisco the last time. I couldn't stand it anymore. Rodgers was on the ground constantly. They have to perform well, and they also have to create running lanes, because Aaron Jones is going to be crucial in keeping the defense guessing on whether they're going to be passing the ball or running the ball, and opening up play action and opening up more opportunities. So I'm looking at you, offensive line. You guys have a great outing out there against the fearsome front of that San Francisco 49ers team, and really good things will happen for that Packers offense. If I had to pick a specific player, because I'm starting to see some of you guys comment off to the right, I'm actually going to go with Blake Martinez and all the responsibilities that comes along with him. So I know there's a lot of Blake Martinez haters out there, but calm down, cool your horses. Obviously, everybody on this team is going to have to be playing their absolute best. But Martinez is going to have a lot of responsibility. He's going to be mindful of where Jimmy Graham is at throughout that game. Yes, you're going to be looking at Ibrahim Campbell in that role. And I haven't seen anything on Raven Green yet speaks, but if Raven Green is active, I could see him in that role. But San Francisco has a really good running game to complement what they have out of George Kittle and that passing offense with Emmanuel Sanders and everyone else. So they have weapons galore. But I think Blake Martinez is going to be crucial at not only making sure that there's a stop at that line of scrimmage, but that he also kind of checks Kittle on his routes and does well on that front. But I'm really looking at the offensive line. I want to go with that offensive line. I'm going to stick with that offensive line. It's time for score prediction, guys. We're going to open this up to Q&A here in just a second. So I'm 14-3 with my score, with my records, or picking the winner this season. So that's a beautiful thing about picking Green Bay every single week. I couldn't pick against them. I just had to come up with reasons and some logic on how they could win every game. So I'm 14-3 on the season. I do think that Green Bay has a shot. If you do not think that Green Bay has a shot, you're absolutely foolish. You shouldn't even watch the game. If you're watching this and you don't think Green Bay has a shot, you're either not a Packer fan or you're not a Packer fan. It's playoff football. The stakes are high. You have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I do think this will be a very close game, and I think it will be a defensive battle for most of the game. But I'm looking at Packers 23, San Francisco 21. It could come within a missed field goal by San Francisco at the end of regulation. Who knows? It could come with a game-winning field goal out of Mason Crosby at the end of regulation. This is going to be within a 3-point game for the Green Bay Packers. So 23-21. That's my score prediction. Kickoff, of course, is Sunday afternoon at 5:40. And at this point, I'm going to take a drink. I might scroll through the comment sections. I don't know if I really want to, but let's hear your guys' thoughts. What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways? What are your questions? Maybe something I covered, something I didn't agree with. I've never done a live Q&A to go hand in hand with my final thoughts video, and I kind of threw this one together mainly because I've had one hell of a week dealing with the flu. And speaking of that, I don't blame Brian Bulaga one bit for not playing on Sunday. I mean, I did not even want to breathe, let alone go out there and put it on the line and hit another person. That would have been absolutely awful. So no, I have no harm, no foul when it comes to Brian Bulaga and deciding to sit out of that game. It sounds like the flu has done its course in Green Bay. Everybody's healthy. All 53 men on that roster are healthy, and Green Bay is going to head into San Francisco once again with a healthy team. But let's kind of I'll kind of scroll up here. I got 26 of you guys tuning in on a Friday night. That's awesome. Thank you guys all for being here. I think we're all very excited. I don't know if you guys are snowed in like I am, but yeah. It's snowing. At least they say it's snowing. I haven't seen a ton of snowing so far. But let's go through the comments here. I want two underdogs to play in the Super Bowl, Green Bay and the Titans. I don't know if the Titans, well, I shouldn't say that. Let's see what happens. I think, like I said, any one of these four teams is the best four teams remaining in the NFL. They've each team has had to proven themselves to get to this point. And it might not even just be a victory over Seattle at home for the Green Bay Packers, but it was what they were able to do to culminate to get to that point has shown what they were able to prove, and they deserve that I guess that shot to face off against the San Francisco 49ers in that matchup. I think the one thing that I can take away from it too is that if Green Bay makes their way to the Super Bowl, there's not a doubt in my mind that they not only earned it, but they are the best team in the NFC. The NFC was absolutely stacked this year. You look at the Saints, you look at the Seahawks, the Niners, the Vikings even. There was a lot of good teams, and to come out of that division as the NFC champion is not a small feat by any stretch of the imagination. So they would definitely set themselves apart from the rest, and deservingly so if they come away with that victory. That was the best atmosphere. This one's from Big B. He was at the game, so he said, that was the best atmosphere I have ever seen and been a part of. Only sat like 3 minutes the entire game. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That first half especially had to have been an absolute joy. Was there for I was right there for the third down to Adams, and the whole stadium erupted. That was podcast 1919. I believe podcast flew up from Arizona to catch the game, so there's some dedication if you've ever seen it. King Smooth has just tuned in. I just went over my final thoughts, so you're going to still have to replay this video to truly think or see how I feel and how I see this game shaking out. But I will tell you right now, I have the Packers winning 23-21. I think Green Bay comes away with this one. So Socks, Rocks, and Docs. So Bulaga had 3 weeks of rest. Do you think that it will help out against the 49ers? I don't think it will hurt for him in that scenario, and he's going to have himself that, like I said, that whole offensive line is going to have themselves a real task. And I think that's something that gets overlooked when they talk about the San Francisco's rush. I mean, what they were able to do against the Minnesota Vikings team, the Vikings do not have a good offensive line. This isn't new news. This is something they struggled with for really the past couple seasons. They've tried to draft and improve that offensive line. But San Francisco was able to essentially send 4 guys at any given moment and create one hell of an awful day for Kirk Cousins. And I don't think with a healthy offensive Packers line that they're going to be able to have the same results. And that's not to say they won't get pressure with just 4 guys, but I don't think it will be as consistent for them to do that. I think that they should give Rodgers time. It's a huge underlooked area from that last game. Bulaga is going to be a huge difference maker, but even if Bulaga goes out with an injury or if something crazy happens along that offensive line, you look at what Jared Valdir has been able to do. I have a lot of confidence in our next backup, and that goes for our backup at center for Corey Linsley as well. There's guys that can step up and fill in on those roles. It's really going to be interesting to see what they do with Bulaga at the end of the year, whether they decide, given his age, if they decide to hang on to him for another year because he's had such an outstanding 2019 campaign, or if they decide to sever ties and they can't keep Jared Valdir. He's going to go back into retirement. They got to figure out something there. So that'll be something that we will watch closely. But we're not talking about the end of the season. We are talking about the NFC Championship game. Speak says, I am in the desert of Arizona. Not much snow there. I'm sure there's not. And boy, that sounds lovely right now. Do you think the team should have went to San Fran earlier just to get used to the time difference and settle in? So I don't think that. Now, I was a little bit surprised that Green Bay did not head out just for the fact that this storm that's affecting us right now is going to be kind of moving into the Green Bay area early morning on Saturday and could affect some of their flight operations. It sounds like with LaFleur's press conference that's not a concern. If that was a concern, they would have planned accordingly. Maybe it will dissipate. I'm not a meteorologist, but we all think that we are meteorologists, and that absolutely drives me crazy. But heading out there early, I don't really know if it would have made too much of a difference. The kickoff for us is 5:40, so it's essentially the same kickoff time that they had last year, so their bodies should be acclimated. They've been extremely fortunate with that. Actually, they had that luck throughout the preseason where all their games were on Thursday night. But you look at that divisional game, the NFC Championship, and then the Super Bowl, all three of those games are lined up right at that 5:40 time slot. So this is Green Bay kind of rolled the dice in their favor on that one. I think they get out there Saturday night. They have themselves, a little bit of a players, coaches meeting, go through some final prep, get a good night's sleep. One thing that, if they had gone out earlier, I know there were a lot of concerns with that San Diego trip because people were out partying, allegedly. I think these guys are all focused. I think it's all business. At this point, there's no messing around. You know what's on the line. Would it have helped? I don't necessarily see that being a huge X factor or a deterrent for them just heading out there a day earlier. Melanie chimes in. I would like to see in the Super Bowl the Green Bay Packers and Kansas City Chiefs. That would be absolutely fun. I've already heard from pundits all over my workplace and even some on the internet that said the NFL would be rigged if the Packers face off against Kansas City for the 100th season, because we all know Super Bowl I was Green Bay and Kansas City, but that wasn't 100 years ago. That was 54 years ago when the first Super Bowl took place. But I think Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, young buck versus the wily old vet would be a very fun matchup to watch. Do you think Jimmy can step up more this week? I absolutely do. I covered that to an extent in my final thoughts if you just tuned in or not, but I do think Jimmy will step up. He seems extremely focused. He did a rare locker room interview this week, and he's relishing in the moment. He knows that he's so close to getting to that Super Bowl and having the chance to get his Super Bowl ring, and just like Rodgers and so many other guys, everybody in that locker room is kind of at a different place in their career and how they view these Super Bowls. But Jimmy himself, I think, is locked in, and it became very apparent with his performance last week against Seattle. AO says 28-23 Packers. I like that one. Christian Ferguson is chiming in, and he wants to bring back the belt. That is a suggestion that he brought up very early on in the inception of this podcast. It hasn't caught on yet, but I'll apologize. I haven't helped your cause a whole lot with that. I'd love to see Aaron Rodgers bring back the belt. Anthony Davis brought back the belt when he visited Lambeau Field last Sunday. So I got to imagine that a guy like that, if anybody can bring back the belt, Anthony Davis would be a huge proponent for us to bring to our side and to keep throwing that one around. Other than Adams, who do you think is going to step up at wide receiver? It has to be Lazard. I'd be foolish to get this far into the season and say that it's going to be Gmo, that it's going to be MVS, that it's going to be Kumro. Lazard had an off week against Seattle. He wasn't all that big of an impact player, and I almost wonder if that could also work to Green Bay's advantage as well. Just because there's not a ton of film of him out there, but I think the Green Bay organization knows what they have out of Lazard. I think we as Packer fans know what Lazard is capable of. He's coming off of a bad game against Seattle, but I think that also motivates him to step up as that alternate wide receiver to Adams. How much will Green Bay use screens? I think they need to throw a few of those early in the game. That one's from Speaks. I agree with you 100%, and I think that's where Aaron Jones comes into this twofold. They have to find a way to integrate him, and if they can't get him going in the run game, I think they have to use Aaron Jones and his screen ability, his catching ability out of the backfield to the fullest extent. You want to talk about a defensive attack that continually gets at the quarterback. We'll let those guys all on through, let Rodgers dish it off to the running back, and let him go and pick up some yards. So I think that they will implement something with Jones, whether it's screens, whether it's in the slot, whether it's him coming out of the backfield at some capacity. And then I also see AL, you're kind of reading my mind on this one. Tyler Ervin is also a dual threat and someone that we can look at to step up in that role as well on Sunday. Big B says his prediction is Mason Crosby hits the game-winning field goal, and he will cry. I will cry. And San Francisco 49ers fans will cry, but for a completely different reason. I don't know if my heart could take that. Like I said, 23-21, it could be 20-21, and with 3 seconds left, and Mason Crosby goes up there to kick that. Boy, my heart, I don't know. It would just be, it'd be overwhelming. I don't know if I want it to come down to that, but I will take the results, and I will not argue about it. Catherick wants to bring up Skip Bayless. He said on national TV today that Jimmy G is better than Aaron Rodgers, and that's what a guy like Skip Bayless does. Don't be fooled by those talking heads, especially when you're looking at Colin Cowherd, Skip Bayless. Those two specifically jump to mind. Maybe Stephen A. Smith to an extent, but those two guys, they love to stir the pot and just spit out bullshit to create clickbait, because it goes all over Facebook, it goes all over YouTube. Don't believe that. Aaron Rodgers is the better quarterback. We all know that. Even they know that. They're just a bunch of cotton-headed niggy-muggins. I got something pretty cool for the Packer Cave, sir. You need a P.O. Box. Podcast 1919 came up with something for the studio set. I think he's hunting for this canvas in the background. I will not play favorites, though, guys, so don't worry. We will get to that drawing in the near future. I will have to get a P.O. Box, and then I will give that to you, because that's absolutely, that gives me chills. That is so cool to think that I've had this channel for 9 months, and I got people who have the support and appreciate it so much that you actually got me something for the cave. So I will have to make a trip to the post office here in the very near future. Number one pack says, I want to see the two underdog teams go up against each other. You want a Green Bay Packers-Titans matchup. Why does everybody say we need to play our best game? What about the 49ers? They, too, need to play their best game. I think where that comes from, and I agree with you, I mean, San Francisco is going to have to play equally as good as they did in Week 12, and they played absolutely outstanding in Week 12. They were not effing around whatsoever in that matchup. They came to play. They essentially shell-shocked the hell out of Green Bay, and that's what got that 37-8 victory that they did. But as far as San Francisco, I had another thought that I wanted to carry with that, but it completely evaded my mind. I might circle back around to it. Maybe I'll take a drink break and I'll think about it, and maybe it'll come back to me, or maybe I'll move on. I had something. I had a place I wanted to go with that. Absolutely disappointing. Nope, I got nothing. We'll move on. That's my thoughts on that, I guess. How much of an impact do you think Swervin Irvin can make for us outside the return game? Well, he proved to be an impact at points throughout that Seattle Seahawks game. Interesting little tidbit that I had heard throughout the week is that Aaron Jones, of course, and Swervin Irvin, for lack of a better term, were both drafted in the same NFL draft class. And Irvin was drafted the 4th-round pick. He was taken by the Houston Texans. He was referred to and compared to coming out of the draft as a Tyreek Hill type of player, a caliber player. So he spends 3 seasons down in Houston. Things did not really work out, obviously, and finds his way on the Green Bay Packers. So Aaron Jones was like, he knew about Irvin all throughout his college career, because these guys were essentially going back and forth as far as their rushing yards and where they stood on the leaderboards and all that stuff. So Aaron Jones has a lot of respect for Irvin. I believe he's the guy that gave Swervin Irvin the nickname Swervin Irvin. And I think that if the Packers, they've done an absolute outstanding job of finding talent throughout this season. I think if they can kind of mold that throughout this offseason, I would expect him to make a run for I guess a more of an active role outside of the kick return or punt return game next year. I don't necessarily think it's outside the realm of possibility he plays a huge role in the next 2 games, but I think you kind of roll with what you have at this point, fill him in at points, maybe use him as a little bit of a I guess sneak attack if you need to throughout the game. Sox, Rocks, and Docs, I love saying your name. They should probably focus on stopping Kelsey. They do have to focus on Kelsey. So Packers have struggled all season against really talented tight ends, and there's going to be no exception to the importance of stopping Kelsey on Sunday. But you look at what the Vikings were able to do. Like I said earlier, Minnesota was able to shut down Travis Kelsey. If I look at let me just pull up the stats real quick, because I think I have it like right here. Box score. So receiving. Or why am I saying Kelsey? George Kittle. Boy, did you type Kelsey? Am I just losing my mind? So Kittle had 3 receptions for 16 yards against the Vikings. So Minnesota did an excellent job. If you guys are blowing me up in the comment section, I apologize. Minnesota did an excellent job of shutting down George Kittle, but it didn't help the rest of it because they couldn't figure out the stopping of the run game either. It's kind of a two-headed monster. They can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the running game. So Green Bay is going to have to be acting on all phases when it comes to that. Yes, I think if you can take Kittle out of the game and really let our improved run defense do what they do, that's going to help us. But that's why all the attention goes to George Kittle. The Packers haven't done well against tight ends, and George Kittle is probably, in my opinion, the best tight end. Not only of the season, but of the season in the league. He's the best tight end in the entire league. And like Sox Rocks and Doc says, we always get shredded by tight ends. Will you do a Q&A if we win this Sunday? I will not do a Q&A on Sunday. I will do one on Monday because I will be celebrating. I will be celebrating an NFC championship. I will have a number of drinks in me, I'm sure. And that excitement will carry over to Monday night. I guarantee you that. I will do a Q&A on Monday night regardless of the outcome on Sunday. So just look forward to that. Monday night, 9 p.m. I will not get the flu. You can count on that. What do you think of the monster in Henry? I think Henry's an absolute freak, and what he's able to do and what he's been just not able to do, but what he has been able to do the last couple of weeks is outstanding. I just don't know. I've had this argument throughout the week, and here's my opinions on that Titans and Kansas City game. Kansas City is going to score. Titans have a pretty solid defense. I think that they will limit Kansas City from scoring 51 points, unlike the Houston Texans. But really, the Titans' offense is built around Derrick Henry. And what? Does Derrick Henry have the capability of running for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns? Yeah, but it's not realistic. I don't think that's 28 points that the Titans would be able to put up there. Maybe they throw another passing touchdown and end up with 35. I think Kansas City, with their offense and how they were firing on all cylinders last week, they're going to come out hot. I expect Kansas City to be able to put up at least 31 to 40 points in that matchup. I just don't think Derrick Henry, he'll get his yards, he'll get his points. I just don't think that will be enough for them to come away with a victory. So I think he's an absolute outstanding player, but they definitely need to figure out a little bit more on that offense. Kudos to the Titans and their team. I'm definitely going to be watching it and pre-gaming for the Packer game. He's a monster, but I just don't know if he can do it all by himself against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Graham goes off. Even if Graham goes off, this is actually worth keeping him. Is it actually worth keeping him next season? Boy. No. I still have to say no. I mean, you look at what he's been able to do the last 2 seasons. He's not the same player that he was. He's not a young buck anymore. I really hope he does go off. I think that he can go off and have another string of great games. I don't think that justifies us keeping him and us paying him the amount of money that we have paid him to keep him on the roster for another year. I think that I think you could clear that up. You look at a guy like Sternberger, number 87, and we see that number. I saw that number all over the field against the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, Jordy Nelson's number brings back memories. Sternberger. And this comes from Matt LaFleur's mouth, has really shown signs of improvement and has excelled the last 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season, and that showed. I mean, he got a lot of playing time and a lot of snaps against the Seattle Seahawks. That is your future. That is the guy that I think you look to. I would love to see the Packers keep Mercedes Lewis another year versus Jimmy Graham, but I think you look at Tanyan, you look at Sternberger, and you use that cap space to maybe go out there and find a true number 2 wide receiver. we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I don't think that you keep Jimmy Graham at the end of the season. I don't think it carries over to another year. Christian says, our defense is the key. It will be tough to score on the Niners' defense. They are elite, and so is our D. If we can sneak in a few scores and bottle up their run game, we will be victorious. And it's going to be a defensive battle. I mean, even 20 points, that 23 to 21 prediction that I have could be a stretch of the imagination. It could be something closer to a 17-16 or a 17-15 type of game. It's going to really boil down to what these defenses are capable of doing. And I have all the confidence in Green Bay's defense to step up. They've been one of the best, if not the best, fourth quarter defense in the league this year, and what they've been able to do. If Packers can find themselves either with a lead late in the game or within striking distance late in the game, I expect the defense to do what they have to do and the Packers to be able to close out that game and come away with a victory. Big B, if we win, I'm wearing my cheese head to school. LaFleur should be coach of the year, but I think I heard that they already said who the coach of the year was. I think it was Jim Harbaugh. It's all rumor and hearsay. I didn't actually physically see that headline, but I agree. LaFleur should be coach of the year. What he's been able to do to turn around this team was absolutely phenomenal. But you look at Kyle Shanahan, he turned around a very porous team from last year, drafted a guy like Bosa, and the sky's the limit with that entire team. Eddie wants to know, do you think that with Rodgers and Adams developing the Jordy-esque connection, we can see that show up more the next game? I think you can definitely count on it. I think it sounds like it's still in its very early phases of what this could potentially be. I mean, the connection that Rodgers and Jordy had was bar none one of the best quarterback, passer, or receiving connections in NFL memory. I mean, you can think about Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. You can think about Steve Young and Jerry Rice. You can think about things throughout history, but Jordy and Rodgers, they always were able to kind of pull something out of the hat and create these wow moments throughout the games, and that's why it was so disappointing, and it hurts not only us Packer fans, but it hurt Aaron Rodgers so much to see Jordy leave. I wonder if Jordy is kicking himself or thinking in the back of his head, man, if only I would have came back for one more year. All the fun that he could have potentially had, but the past is in the past. I think, like I said, to answer your question, that relationship will get there. It will continue to blossom. I think what we saw last week against Seattle is the tip of the iceberg. And I think we can expect to see more of it on Sunday against the 49ers. But how much more? That's yet to be determined. Will he go off for 160 yards again? I don't think so. I think Adams will probably be somewhere in that 90 to 120 yards type of game. And if that's the case and they're coming away with a victory, that means that some of these role players stepped up, that Jones had himself a game, or that it was just a defensive battle. And that kind of went along with it as well. So the Jordy connection would create a great mismatch, especially in man coverage. Really, you put Adams in man coverage, and he's going to pretty much eat up everyone that he's lined up against. And what the hell, speaking of which, what the hell was up with Richard Sherman last week? I mean, the guy is known to be boisterous, and he likes to play the whole, you guys are always doubting me and I'm better than, whatever. How much fun would it be if after his little temper tantrum that he put out there last week, if Adams was able to recreate his production against the Niners and specifically against Sherman and go out there and just absolutely torch Sherman? That's going to be one of those matchups I'm watching very closely throughout the game, and I hope that he can just make Sherman just look like foolish and idiotic a couple times throughout the matchup. I'm definitely hoping so. Do you think we are going to be able to take advantage of the 49ers corners? Tough to say. I think that this is definitely where you have to look into the ability of Matt LaFleur to scheme these guys open and to create plays for the Packers to find themselves in opportune positions. Now there's a really good, I should maybe I have it pulled up here. There's a really good YouTube channel out there. I've never talked to the guy. I think good YouTube channel out there. Oh yeah, there's that. I've never talked to the guy. I think one of you guys suggested that I speak to him, and reach out to him. But where is this guy? So what he does is he breaks down game film, and you might already know who I'm talking about or who I'm thinking about. But he does a really good job of breaking down that Seattle Seahawks game last week and what LaFleur was able to do throughout that game to kind of catch the Seahawks off guard on multiple occasions. So it's the Jackson Kruger Sports. So if you guys are looking for a little bit more football stuff to watch over the weekend, there it is. Check out Jackson Kruger Sports. He does a really good job. There's nothing flashy with any of his production value, but he does a really good job of showing you kind of what's developing in the play. And specifically, watch his video that says why Matt LaFleur was brilliant in Green Bay. And essentially in that one, he does a phenomenal job of just showing how they show the same sort of formations and the same plays, but they run different concepts, and they're able to catch Seattle off guard. And one of the bigger ones that he was able to show, or what came of it, was Devontae's first touchdown of the game, which gave us a 7-0 lead. So that's really where I think, San Francisco's talented from the cornerback side of things, but it's gonna be looking at LaFleur and what he's able to call and what he decides to call and who he puts out of there on the field and the personnel and all that. That's going to play a bigger role on the impact of our passing game than I think really just one-on-one matchups. If you're going to look at anybody that can win a one-on-one matchup, it's Adams and who's ever across from him. But outside of that, no one else has proven that they're able to do that man-to-man on a consistent basis. So Kyle wants to know, instead of asking me at work tomorrow, he wants to know, I'm sure that this has already been said, but I feel like the Smith bros really show up on Sunday. Rodgers' experience can beat the 49ers' hot streak. No one's really brought up a whole lot of the Smith brothers and the impact that they are going to have on Sunday, to be fair. That hasn't been brought up yet. And I think a lot of the reason is, I think we at this point expect it. These guys have put up so many sacks. They lead the league in combined pressures with the two of those guys out there. If they can't bring the quarterback down, they're able to disrupt passes enough. And I look at that as far as Russell Wilson, and they were making life difficult for Russell Wilson last week. Russell Wilson is a top 5 quarterback in the league by extending plays and being like a chicken without a fence. I don't know. You guys probably saw that somewhere else the week, but he can extend plays, and they were making life very difficult for Wilson. Garoppolo, on the flip side, sure, he's young. He can probably run if he needs to, but I think that's going to be an advantage for those guys. I expect them to be able to get to Garoppolo a lot more throughout that game, and they will have an impact, no doubt. If Za'Darius and Preston don't show up, the Packers aren't going to have a chance in this matchup. And then as far as Rodgers, he's the better quarterback. Don't let Skip Bayless tell you otherwise. He's the better quarterback, hands down, bar none. There's no need to discuss it. I want more short passes like in the Lions game. What else we got out there? We are about an hour into this. 24 viewers. You guys are hanging out. You guys are doing great. Thanks for hanging out. We'll do a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm going to get to my sick wife upstairs, who I'm sure wants to go to bed. But we're talking Packers. I don't want to end that. I never want to end that. Daniel 1K, I think you're a new commenter to podcast. I haven't seen you comment before, but Daniel says, I expect us to use the game plan that the 49ers have been using and do quick short throws, play action off running it hard, and at least 50-50 run pass, control the clock. Controlling the clock is going to be absolutely crucial, and we're at the tail end of this video, but like I said, the biggest factor, or not the biggest, but one of the many factors that game when Week 12 became such a blowout is that the Packers were not able to control the clock. They were not able to control the time of possession, and that defense just got worn out more and more that game went on. So I agree with you. The Packers are going to have to figure out the play action side of things. They're going to have to be looking at screen passes, and they're going to have to keep it balanced. They're going to have to keep San Francisco guessing. I don't think this is a game where Rodgers is going to throw 40, 45 passes and they come away with the victory. They're going to have to find out from either Jones, from either Williams, or maybe even Swerve and Irvin, some sort of run game that they can put together. And I don't care. I would take screen passes, even though they're not runs. I would take those as successful run games to keep the defense guessing throughout that matchup. So these are all things. It's a great question. they do need to control the clock, and especially when you're on the road, it's more crucial than ever to take control of that game and really kind of keep their fans out of it as well. You want to keep them quiet. Keep them quiet. Podcast definitely wants my podcast. I can't wait to send me what you got for me. Again, man, so much respect. Thank you for doing that. I don't even know how to do a PO box. I'm gonna have to just walk in there and be like, get me one, give me something. Jesse wants to know, does this sound crazy? Yes. Aaron Rodgers needs to keep this team in it so the Smith brothers can work in the third and the fourth. I don't think Aaron Rodgers needs to be the guy. I think we've seen to get to a 13-3 record that Rodgers doesn't have to be the guy, but I think he has to play like he did last week. I mean, Rodgers' statistics for the most part didn't really blow anybody away against the Seattle Seahawks, but what we saw out of Rodgers is that his throws looked good. There weren't missed throws throughout that game, and when we needed a big throw, Rodgers was able to throw dimes like Damon Lillard in that dropping dimes commercial that would always play throughout the NBA playoffs last week. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't, but I know what I'm talking about. So Rodgers needs to play like he did last week. I don't think he can take a step backwards. I don't expect Rodgers to take a step backwards. He's equally as focused as everyone else in that locker room. And coming off of that performance that he had last week, I expect him to build off of that too. I think it does. He's a human being, and when you can go out there and have a great game, come away with a divisional round victory, know that you're one of the last 4 teams out there, I mean, that builds confidence in any single person that you build that scenario around, and Rodgers is no different. He wants that second ring. I don't think he'll take a step backwards. And I agree, Smith Bros will do the rest. Sox, Rocks, and Docs, they literally have the same defense as the Seahawks, only better. I think that will help us out. Eddie wants to know, I like Z from day one, but after the interview, when we clinched the North, I love the man. Seems like he's truly bought in. With Russ, though, he's so damn squirrely. They had him dead to rights so many times. I know it's a bittersweet thing with Za'Darius Smith because we have, after this season, he is going to be a Packer for 3 more years. He signed a 4-year contract, and I just hope that he finishes his career. We don't know what the future is going to bring. Obviously, I hope he stays healthy. He's 2 in his prime. He will improve and get better. I hope that he can finish out his career in Green Bay. I definitely don't want to see him in any other jersey, even though he wasn't. And that's rare. I mean, even though he wasn't drafted by the Packers, I feel like this guy has been a Packer his whole life, and that's a very cool feeling. I'm right there with you on your feelings with Z. Packers fan says they will have a huge upset. You're saying 27-24, a little bit more points you're throwing on the board for him. And that is my most recent comment. So an hour and 2 minutes in, I've said what I've had to say. I feel like you guys have said what you had to say. Unless there's anything else that you possibly want to talk about, we might wrap up this video. We might go on with our weekend. We might continue to wake up one day closer. That's a little bit morbid when you say it that way. We will wake up one day closer to our Sunday matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Kyler comments, I really need this win. Here's where I'm at, guys. Like I said, win, lose, or draw. What a hell of a first year for LaFleur. What a fun season it's been. I mean, it's not very often that you're going to have these 13-3 types of years where things go well so much of the season, and you just have a fun team to build around that's new. This has been a special year, and I know what Rodgers means. I mean, I'm not part of the locker room, but I know what Rodgers means when he says it's just been a special group of guys. It's been a lot of fun. It's felt different, and these guys all believe in themselves. I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't want to stop whatsoever. Want the Packers to win. Another 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl and all that comes with it would be an absolute blast. I love waking up with my coffee and watching Good Morning Football, and the Packers they're talking about them constantly because we all know the Packers don't get a whole lot of love with their small market. Part of the reason why I started this channel, so you guys could have a little bit more content in your back pocket for Packers coverage. But it's been a fun ride, and I hope they go out there. I hope they give them everything they got. I obviously hope they come away with a win, but if they do not come away with a win, I truly mean it. I love the team. I love the direction this team is heading. But we're not gonna do the eulogy at this point. We're not gonna go down that road. Anything can happen. Underdogs or not, they have a team. They have a talented group of guys, and I think that they will go out there and they're gonna surprise some people. I do think that they will surprise some people. I've been watching Green Bay when the 2017 season started. This is the furthest I've seen the Pack in the playoffs, so this is all new to you, Kyler. So enjoy it, man. This has become commonplace for many of us Packer fans. I had this conversation today. For so many years there, it was just a given that, we had 8 consecutive years that we made the playoffs. Like when the season started, you're like, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. Let's just get to the playoffs and then let's do our job. Let's go win another Super Bowl. It doesn't take long to lose that. It's been 2 years without the playoffs, and now it's just like, man, here we are again. I mean, it's kind of a little bit like riding a bike to an extent, but we took all those years for granted. It's good to get back in our winning ways. I think it's going to be sustainable. I definitely believe it's sustainable for the next couple seasons at least. Kyler, enjoy it. It's a lot of fun being a Packers fan. You've made a lot of foolish decisions in your life, but being a Packers fan was not one of them. I promise you that. Melanie says, it's been a great season and a great year for Green Bay. Go Pack, go. And Daniel says, can Rodgers find some gaps with only 4 rushing and pick up an easy 5? Make Niners change. You're still throwing out questions. I'm trying to close the book on this conversation. I don't know if you've subscribed yet, but subscribe to the channel. We can address more of your questions and concerns on Monday's video or as we move forward throughout the story of this YouTube channel. So I'm wrapping up the video, guys. I'm going to get upstairs. I am going to relax. I'm gonna enjoy the NFC Championship weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I didn't know what to expect with a Friday night crowd, but we had some really good turnout. I think I was up to like 30 concurrent viewers, which is a huge achievement for this channel. I know there's so many people out there that get like thousands of viewers, but 30 of you were here at one point, 24 to 25 of you hung out throughout the whole thing. So awesome. Have yourself a great Friday evening. Have yourself a great weekend. Go Pack, go. I will see you guys on the internet. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.